Welcome to week 6 of English 104, our fiction class. And please prepare to have your mind blown in this video because I'm about to blow your mind. Before I blow your mind, I want to let you know that what we are doing for the next 3 weeks. So we're at the beginning of week 6 when you're seeing this video. For weeks 6 and 7, we're going to be reading, consuming with the book, Beloved, which I assigned and which you should have a copy of. Your copy might not be the same copy as mine. This is one that I've had for a long time. So I'm not going to be referring to page numbers. If I'm talking about a general area, I'll be talking about like the first third, the second third, or the third third, because I don't actually have the copy that you'll be reading. But we're just talking about the text here. There's probably an excellent introduction in yours. There is no introduction in mine, but there might well be in yours. Please pardon me that I don't know that, and that introduction will likely help you in your understanding of the book. But just to let you know, yes, it's a meaty novel, and we have 2 weeks to read it, and in addition to reading it, I have included an audio version of it for you to listen to while you read. And I want to be very specific about that. Now, sometimes during this class even, I'm sure, you might have found audio versions of pieces of fiction that you could listen to while you drove. Or perhaps you could listen to while you washed dishes. Beloved is not really that kind of book, and even expert consumers of literature and fiction can be challenged by it. In fact, my wife, who is also an English teacher, told me to mention that she had to read it. How many times, Corey? How many? Just say it out loud so they can hear you.
I had to read the first chapter 5 times.
5 times.
Before I understood and could move forward.
Yeah, that's my wife talking right there. She had to read that 5 times. Risley, why are you giving us something so hard to read? There's a real reason for that. Why I'm giving you something really hard to read. About week 8 of the term one time, a student came to my office hours and said, I thought this class was going to be about literature. I want to know what some of the greatest literature on the planet is, and all you're doing is teaching us the elements of fiction, etc., etc., etc. Those are the outcomes of the class. And yes, I use a lot of really accessible writing because that's what got me interested. But this student comes, she wants to know about literature, and so I thought, okay, good. Some people are out there, they want to know about, so when does fiction turn into literature? When does entertainment become transformative? Because that's the nature of literature. It's when it transforms us and sometimes a world. And listen, when I was an undergrad, English teachers have this way of going on and pursuing tangents, and I'm just going to pursue one. But if you look at a list of the Nobel Prize winners in literature, they literally change they change our culture and they change our world. I'm going to go back to, sadly, a dead white male by the name of John Steinbeck, who won the Nobel Prize after he wrote a book called Grapes of Wrath, which shine the light on the working conditions of people in agriculture and changed how we view people in extraordinarily hard circumstances. And that Nobel Prize goes back decades, about a half century. The Nobel Prize winner that we're going to be spending these next 2 weeks just reading, obviously, is Toni Morrison. And my copy was written before she won the Nobel Prize in Literature, likely, or they would certainly mention it right up here. But Toni Morrison ends up winning the Nobel Prize in Literature. Sara Danius, who is the permanent secretary of the Swedish Academy, and that's the academy that gives out the Nobel Prize, she says, does it really say the permanent secretary? She's the permanent secretary of the Swedish Academy. I am not an expert on the Swedish Academy, but they give out a ton of Nobel Prizes, which are intended to kind of better mankind. That's the idea of that. And I just want to let you know what Sarah Danius says. She says the Nobel Prize in Literature is awarded to someone who has done outstanding work in an idealistic direction that adds the greatest benefit to humankind. And wow. So that means that if you were to search up, like Wikipedia, a list of all of the winners of the Nobel Prize in Literature, you would see a great list of people whose writing has transformed not only the individuals who read it, but also the communities where people live, the cultures in which they live sometimes. And that is what apparently my previous iterations of this class was missing, because I wasn't throwing in one of these huge heavy hitters. And when I started to think, I can give you a bunch of great writers, but to really capture the power of literature in the way that we can, our outcomes are open to, I always interpret them as kind of an escalator upon which I wanted my students to just become big fans of literature. And that's why I share with you the Sun magazines, and I don't pick which stories you're going to look at. You got to pick those. And then I also sent you to another database where you got to choose. And so that was your midterm that you did. Probably working on it right now because the deadline hasn't happened yet as I make this. But by Monday, that deadline will have happened. But anyway, again, I have tried to create this class in such a way that for a lot of the work that you read, and you apply those elements of fiction to and those techniques of analysis, you're getting to choose that fiction, because I want at the end of this class for you to love reading. That is an aspirational goal of mine. It is certainly not in my hands. I can't. But I can just try to give you fiction that I think you will love. Now, to transition to this piece right here, and again to underscore its complexity. Now, I would say that while accessible, the fiction in The Sun is accessible and also in a certain way complex. I think that in some of the discussions you have written, and probably in your midterms, I checked a few of the early submitted midterms, and people have found the work meaty, and they've been able to pull out symbols, and they've been able to analyze it. So it is literature. It remains to be seen whether it is a part of a body of work that's going to win something like the Nobel Prize in Literature. So to answer this one student who is not in this class anymore, obviously, she graduated from this institution, but she did want more meaty literature, and this is it. This is Toni Morrison's Beloved. And now I want to blow your mind. I don't want to make the longest video in the world. Hey, it's only, oh shoot, this little clip is only 3 minutes, 42 seconds. But anyway, I want to keep the video short. Sadly, I have to read it out loud to you. So if you want to get your book, you can click pause here and get your book and read along with me. Now, my voice as I read this is different than Toni Morrison's, who is on the MP3 that is to accompany your work here. Please remember that my brilliant wife had to read that opening 5 times. You just have to, because it's like nothing we've ever seen. And one of those features about the Nobel is that it's literature that takes the form of literature, the form of fiction, in new directions. And Toni Morrison's mission was to expose the story of slavery for an audience, not of just white people who, she's actually responding to about 100 years of slave narratives that didn't even really come close, and were intended for that wide audience, for them to, it was almost like this sort of, she views it as a kind of sick obsession that white people had with what had happened, and they never really wanted to know what had really happened. And so she wrote her book to the audience that she needed to just expose this. She needed it. There's a clip, and we'll probably end up seeing it somewhere, where she talks about how there were no, at the time that she was writing this, there were no monuments. There were monuments to other terrible events that had happened in American history. World War II monuments, these kinds of things, these events that we want to remember. And yet somehow, in the hundreds of years since slavery, not hundreds, but it's getting there, in the many, many decades, dozens of decades, since slavery, there were no monuments. And so she wanted to write a book that became that monument, that exposed what it really was. And she ends up choosing a story that was actually in a newspaper, the story of a woman in slavery who makes the dreadful decision to kill her own child. Now, that's where this book starts. This book starts literally right there. It's hard to read. So I'm going to read it, and I'm going to read it and unpack it. And I'm sorry, but it's going to blow your mind, and it's not pretty what I'm about to share. It's very difficult, in fact, but you'll miss it. I promise you. You will miss it. And when I read this to you, I will also be sort of illuminating the importance of you literally reading this a sentence at a time. You may have to actually not use the audio, because I think the audio can move us too fast. And gosh, forgive me, my videos have been critiqued for my pace, and apparently I go too slowly sometimes, but I am trying to be clear. So allow me to read. It will be a little bit slow. I'm telling you, for this particular piece of literature, that's what it takes. So, and also, gosh, we're so stressed right now. We just had midterms. We're racing towards finals. Our lives are packed. We may have jobs. We may have relationships. We may have relatives that are not well. We may just want to jump through hoops. I know, wouldn't it be great if we could just jump through hoops? I kind of want to just jump through hoops too, and I can't, because we have to go here. We have to have this transformative experience. And again, that is, this almost imaginative goal that I have, where I was transformed by this book when I read it, and when it came out. I was completely transformed by it. I didn't realize what I didn't know about the history of my own country, about my own racism, about the racism with which I was surrounded by. I didn't know that an entire perspective on the slave story, the slave period in our history, had been denied me, had been censored from me. And this is the only way that I got it. But allow me to just begin at the beginning. The first line is 124 was spiteful. 124 was spiteful. So find that and join me. Full of a baby's venom, the women, and bear in mind, sorry, I'm going to start over again. I probably should edit that out, but I won't have time. So I'm just going to move forward. I'm only reading in my copy a few pages. It's just a few pages, so if you're rolling your eyes and you're ready to drop dead, try not to. Try not to drop dead. Yeah, it's just 5 pages. So it's less. It's 4 pages. It's so short. Forgive me for looking at that, but I wanted you to know it was just so short. So here we go again. I'm going to start at the beginning. 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom. The women in the house knew it, and so did the children. For years, each put up with the spite in his own way. But by 1873, Seth and her daughter Denver were its only victims. The grandmother, baby Shugs, was dead, and the sons Howard and Bugler had run away by the time they were 13 years old. As soon as merely looking in a mirror shattered it, that was the signal for Bugler. As soon as 2 tiny handprints appeared in the cake, that was it for Howard. Neither boy waited to see more. Another kettle full of chickpeas smoking in a heap on the floor. I'm stopping at a semicolon, not even a period, because we've just had. So what have we seen here? This is a ghost story. It's a ghost story. And we have, Bugler and Howard have cut out because they don't want to be with an angry ghost. So in many ways, this book is set up like a detective novel where we are seeing, it's not necessary, well, it actually is. I mean, in some ways, there has been a crime, and we are seeing the consequences, the fallout. We are seeing the fallout of that crime. And that's, on my page, what I just read you is only this much. It's dense. That's called dense writing. It's very dense. It's already, she's covered, she's referenced a lot of time in very few words. That can be disorienting for us as readers. I hope that you guys appreciate that I am trying to take the time here to, just not send you into this blindly. It's very intricate. So I'll go back. Neither boy waited to see more, semicolon. Another kettle full of chickpeas smoking in a heap on the floor. Soda crackers crumbled and strewn in a line next to the door sill. So it's that in a line that makes that creepy. So these are the kind of ambient features that this book adds to description and setting that should put chills down your spine, and they'll be there through most of the book. Obviously, if you start to skim over this, it'll just seem like a hodgepodge. You won't even be able to parse it out, And we're not reading Ulysses here by James Joyce or something, which really can do that too. I mean, this is not Ulysses. This is actually really comprehensible. It's really mainstream. This is called a mainstream paperback. This book made millions of dollars and was turned into a movie. Please don't watch the movie until you read the book. Obviously, you'll miss the entire book. Can't do it. It doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. Movies rarely do what a book does. Nor did they wait for one of the relief periods, the weeks, months even, when nothing was disturbed. No, each one fled at once, the moment the house committed what was for him the one insult not to be borne or witnessed a second time. Within 2 months, in the dead of winter, leaving their grandmother, baby Shugs, Seth, their mother, and their little sister Denver, all by themselves in the gray and white house on Bluestone Road. It didn't have a number then because Cincinnati didn't stretch that far. In fact, Ohio had been calling itself a state only 70 years when the first brother, and then the next stuffed quilt packing into his hat, snatched up his shoes, and crept away from the lively spite the house felt for them. You will learn more as you read this. It's not just the house spite. They left for bigger reasons than that. Their lives were in danger, and not by a ghost. Or at least they could have felt that. And those kind of details are the features that bubble up. We talk about the motivation of characters here. Our narrator here is really skillful and holds back. She doesn't want, she wants to tell this story over the course of the novel and not, right there, the whole thing. You can't do it. You have to hold back. So we're going to learn so much more. Even though those 2 characters are gone, we learn more. Baby Shugs didn't even raise her head. That's, again, and you've got a bunch of names piling up. Remember, this is the grandmother, right? She's in bed, and these are kinds of things. If you're just like, wait a second, who was Baby Shugs again? That's natural. Some of us might be brand new readers to a novel, certainly a novel that's as intricate as this. From her sickbed, she heard them go, but that wasn't the reason she lay still. It was a wonder to her that her grandsons had taken so long to realize that every house wasn't like the one on Bluestone Road. Suspended between the nastiness of life and the meanness of the dead, she couldn't get interested in living life. She couldn't get interested in leaving life or living it, let alone the fright of two creeping off boys. Her past had been like her present, intolerable. Look at how that's set off by those M dashes. Intolerable. That's what this whole book is about. It's why there's this ghost. So that intolerable, it's like a match. Everything is on fire with the intolerableness of the lives that people face. And since she knew death was anything but forgetfulness, right? She knows anything but, because she's been face to face with a ghost for a lot of years. She used the little energy left her for pondering color. Bring a little lavender in if you got any, pink if you don't. And Seth would oblige her with anything from fabric to her own tongue. Winter in Ohio was especially rough if you had an appetite for color. Sky provided her only drama. Gosh, I just read this and I was like, wait, what? Sky? But sky is filled with blue, of course. And it can be filled with blue, white, and grays, So that's how, it's so beautiful. You'll have chills not just because of the ghost story, but because of these fantastic moments there. Sky provided the only drama, and counting on a Cincinnati horizon for life's principal joy was reckless indeed. Now the horizon is also going to pick up those varying shades of sunrise and sunset. That sentence is all about color, and the word color is not there, and neither are those sort of oranges, those purples. They're just, you can't do it. She's leaving it to mundane people like me to mention the colors. And for you, she just gives us these meaty sentences that we really need to stop and think about. And the book is filled with them. I say, and I have provided that audio for, that to help. But if she's reading too fast, stop, read by yourself, find the voice. And the voice is right there in that audio, so you can stop and kind of do that voice. And that's Toni Morrison's voice, by the way. Sky, horizon. So Seth and the girl Denver did what they could and what the house permitted for her. Together they waged a perfunctory battle against the outrageous behavior of that place, against turned over slop jars, smacks on the behind, and gusts of sour air, for they understood the source of the outrage as well as they knew the source of the light. Baby Suggs died shortly after the brothers left, with no interest whatsoever in their leave-taking or hers, and right afterwards, Seth and Denver decided to end the persecution by calling forth the ghost that tried them so. Perhaps a conversation, they thought, an exchange of views or something would help. So they held hands and said, "Come on, you may as well just come on." The sideboard took a step forward, but nothing else did. "Grandma Baby must be stopping it," said Denver. She was 10 and still mad at Baby Suggs for dying. Seth opened her eyes. "I doubt that," she said. "Then why don't it come?" "You forgetting how little it is," said her mother. "She wasn't even 2 years old when she died. Too little to understand, too little to talk much even." "Maybe she don't want to understand," said Denver. "Maybe, but if she'd only come, I could make it clear to her." Seth released her daughter's hand, and together they pushed the sideboard back against the wall. Outside, a driver whipped his horse into a gallop. Local people felt necessary when they passed 124. Just another creepy, beautiful detail. Just scoot on past this house because it's creeping them out. For a baby, she throws a powerful spell, said Denver. No more powerful than the way I loved her, Seth answered, and there it was again, the welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones. So we moved. We moved from the scene inside the house where they have just tried to make a seance or whatever. I don't remember the word that she just used, but they wanted to talk to her. Maybe she didn't use any kind of word, but this was by the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, people were constantly trying to reach the dead, and they had these things called seances. And so that's just a little bit of context for you, and it was very common, actually. People, would try to do this, and there were charlatans and fakery people who would, to fan the flames. That's why we got over it. It never really worked out the way people thought it would. But what I'm pausing to draw your attention to here is the way that scene moves. That scene, no more powerful than the way I loved her, Seth answered. And there it was again, the welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones. Man, we've gone. It's all happening in Seth's mind. It's that beautiful movement. Seth answered, and there it was again. What's the it? The memory. So it's a memory. There it was again, that memory. But Toni Morrison's not going to say that because she's just going to kind of, she doesn't want too much. She just wants us in the middle of these scenes and to flow with it. So the welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones. So we can connect that. They're trying to reach the ghost of her daughter, who's 2 years old, who died, and the unchiseled headstones. So we move into that memory with Seth. We know that Denver's not in this scene with the unchiseled headstone. We just kind of go with that. It's almost like we're a ghost in some way, right? We're floating around this room where the sideboard jumps out. And we overhear this conversation, and then right inside Seth's head, there we are, the welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones, the one she selected to lean against on tiptoe. Stay with me. The welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones, the one she selected to lean against on tiptoe, her knees wide open as any grave. Pink as a fingernail it was, and sprinkled with glittering chips. 10 minutes, he said. You got 10 minutes, I'll do it for free. I'm confused. You might well be too. Let's stay here and have our minds blown. This is the mind-blowing part, I promised. You got 10 minutes, I'll do it for free. Notice, no quotation marks, but there is the first person, right? So all of the other parts. And look at us, we can talk with, third person, first person point of view. But yeah, so that first person point of view is got to be a voice, right? Because we had the he said. So 10 minutes. Give it any kind of ugly voice you want. 10 minutes, he said. You got 10 minutes, I'll do it for free. If you have 10 available anyway, let's just have our minds blown. 10 minutes for 7 letters. With another 10, could she have gotten dearly too? She had not thought to ask him, and it bothered her still that it might have been possible. There it was again, this memory. It's still bugging her. Could she have gotten the dearly beloved? Your mind hasn't been blown yet. I'm just pausing. She had not thought to ask him, and it bothered her still that it might have been possible that for 20 minutes, a half hour, say, she could have had the whole thing, every word she heard the preacher say at the funeral, and all there was to say surely engraved on her baby's headstone, dearly beloved. But what she got, settled for, was the one word that mattered. She thought it would be enough, rutting among the headstones with the engraver, his son looking on, the anger in his face so old, the appetite in it quite new. That should certainly be enough to answer one more preacher, one more abolitionist, and a town full of disgust. So I'm going to quit there. That was really only 3 pages. And it took a long time to get through. Our minds can be blown. Because I slowed us down, you might have seen it. I will mention that the key word there is rutting. Look it up. It's probably some of the definitions are, animal procreation. Rutting. So she didn't have enough money to have dearly beloved chiseled in. She didn't even have enough money to have beloved chiseled in. So the man offered to chisel in beloved if he could rape or molest her for 10 minutes. And oh gosh, that's why you have to, my wife, there's my wife saying she had to read this thing, 5 times. I'm going to quit reading now, but you're going to begin reading now. And I could read it all day long. And so, just so that you don't panic and go, oh my gosh, do I have just the 1 week to read this? No, you have 2. We're gonna use week 6 and 7 to read this, and you'll see next week in week 7 discussion questions and a project that we'll be working on. Just a little bit. We'll have a check-in at the end, so there will be something there on Friday of week 7 for you to respond to. So definitely read. This is an assignment. It's worth points and the whole school thing. But I don't like the what is it, the hammer and the stick method of teaching or whatever. I want you to be learning this from an intrinsic motivation. I hope that this video has made you curious, interested enough to kind of find out what other little surprises and stunning literary treasures there are for you, wherever you are in terms of your appreciation of fiction. So it is my true hope that this will increase that. Do reach out to friends, maybe members of the class that you can contact through the forums. You've seen everybody's names. You may know some people. Go ahead and send them a message. That's certainly within. And I'm not going to structure a bunch of Zoom stuff that'll put people under pressure and stress, but I would read it with people. I would read it. I would have others listen to it with you. It's some beautiful audio that we have to accompany the assigned book. And I want you to be paying attention to the moments that leap out to you. Mark up your book, underline it, use Post-its. There will be assignments that ask you specific questions, that ask you to actually go and find images. So some of the creative work we're going to be doing toward the end of week 7. So we have just this week to just be reading, and then when we open up the next week, you'll see some creative assignments. But those assignments will ask you to find images and moments, and we're going to be using the internet, grabbing images and making a slideshow or making a video, doing something creative here that not only sort of shows that we understood the book and that we got it and that we're getting deep into it and reaching out, but it will also allow us to see some different perspectives, to see your sense of the book. Okay. As always, You have my number. Contact me with any questions. This is our week 6 video. It's kind of our week 6 and 7 video. So I want you to know we got 2 weeks to read this book by the Friday of the week 7. I know that that's enough time, but I do also know that it's a busy time in the term. This is the meat and potatoes. Contact me with any questions, and I hope you enjoy Beloved by Toni Morrison.